In 1984, John Thompson became the first African-American head coach to win a major collegiate championship when his Georgetown basketball team beat Houston 84-75. There is no question but the fact he did it his way and didn't seem to care what anybody else thought about it. Now the big fella's 69 years old and is a little bit more mellow. But I think to this day, the strongest characteristics of the man are his physical and moral qualities, which seem to compose his personality. Here, then, is my conversation with Big John Thompson. John, how did you go from the Boston Celtics? I know then you were drafted, I think, in the expansion by the Bulls.
Yeah.
How did you get into coaching, and what was it that drove you?
Well, it happened by accident. Nothing drove me. It happened by accident. I had no intentions of being a basketball coach. I wanted to be a teacher, basically a social worker kind of person, freelance kind of thing. And I enjoyed working with young people. One day when I was working in the poverty program, the pastor called me from St. Anthony's, the parish in which I was living at the time, and asked me would I coach St. Anthony's high school team. And I told him I had to think about it. I'd go by the school and take a look at the situation. And I ended up telling him yes, and I was moonlighting. And it grew into my interest level coming to Georgetown and becoming the Georgetown coach.
And I heard you say once that Georgetown supported you all the way through. You turned that program around quickly.
Well, I had support from Georgetown, there's no question. Some people at Georgetown, let me make that very clear. You know, it worked out. I mean, it wasn't easy. It was a very difficult thing because there are a lot of sociological entities that enter into it. When an African American gets a job at a school that wouldn't even take that African American as a player.
John, Georgetown had won 3 games the year before you got there.
Yeah.
3 years, you're in the tournament. I mean, it was really a quick transition. In 1982, you're in the national championship game.
Yeah.
What was that like? How was that transition made?
Well, it was fun. You know, I couldn't begin to tell you how it was made other than a lot of people with hard work. You know, if you look at Georgetown even now, as far as physical resources, it doesn't have some of the physical resources that other universities have, but it has human resources.
John, I followed you a long time. I used to play basketball as a little kid down at Turkey Thicket, and I watched you play in high school. I was just 8 or 9, and you were in the Knights Columbus tournament with Carroll, that great run. I watched you make that transition. I watched you all the way through, and here you are now in the national championship. But the one that's an indelible memory for me is the 1982 championship game, and Brown throws that ball away. And you take a timeout with 2 seconds left. But at the end of the game, they take a shot of you, and you're face-to-face with Brown, talking to him, trying to console him.
You tend to know, if you've been working with people, that they feel just as bad as you felt. And first of all, I was a youngster at the time, and I was lucky. I could have emotionally reacted another way and still had the same feelings, you know, and that's why I feel that that was a very lucky thing for me to have done, to walk over and to hug him.
You also have the other side of John Thompson. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, and a lot of people, and I'm talking about your players, have taken the wrath of John Thompson. Probably made them better people. Do you agree with that?
I am an emotional person. You know, I'm not, you know, I left it Giselle said once, and I agree with him 100%. When I go to church, I want the minister to be emotional. I don't want to go to sleep in church. If I'm being coached by somebody, I don't want to have a mummy there, so I didn't coach that way. You know what I mean? I show those emotions. A lot of times they probably were misinterpreted by players and by fans, but I was there to teach. I wasn't there to be somebody's friend. When you understand that, you're an athlete, and probably a lot of the people who jumped on your butt, you respect a hell of a lot more now that you're older than people who cuddled you.
Who got the first blow in? There's no reason for that in college basketball.
You remember the game in Pittsburgh? Rafter and I are doing this game. Some kid throws an elbow at the end of the game. You take the kids, you walk off the court when the fight broke out. I mean, your guys wouldn't back down from anybody, and they wouldn't lose without giving it everything they had. And it came from you.
Well, yeah, it probably came from all of us in the environment. Probably sometimes we were too aggressive, too. You know, I think we probably had more impact on NCAA rules than any team in history. And I think about that, Tim, when I think about the job I'm doing now. Probably I would do my job a little bit different because I understand your job a little bit more. You know, but I never sat down and thought in my mind, I'm doing this just to mess with this guy or make his livelihood harder. And I think they thought I did that sometimes, but I didn't bother to explain it.
1984, you win the national championship. Tell me what that was like for you.
Well, it was great because from day one when I came into Georgetown in 1972, I looked up on the wall and I told some of the kids that were there that an NCAA banner will fly on that wall. And I was young and dumb and stupid for even saying that. I didn't make a public announcement about it, but I felt that we would win. And I dedicated myself to winning. Well, in 1984, that was the fulfillment of one of my goals and my objectives. It also was very significant to me because I was an African American in doing it. And not the fact that I was the first, but the first who was provided with an opportunity and accomplished it. And I think that had to mean something to me because of the fact of what had historically happened in this country, and I don't want to go through all of that. But in the meantime, I was very well aware of the fact that that wall had been knocked down.
Up next, John Thompson on breaking down barriers.
I'm glad I wasn't born white.
On the heroes in his life.
My father couldn't read or write. His name was John Thompson, too. He couldn't spell it.
And on the nation's so-called #1 hoops fan.
You can't describe it.
When we return.